Hello and welcome everyone with another episode of Jaipuriya Talks. We are very privileged and fortunate to have Mr. Saamdu Chetri with us. He was born in a cowshed in rural Bhutan and he has a PhD in commerce. After working for 25 years in private and development sectors and 5 years as head of good governance in PMO of the first democratically elected Prime Minister of Bhutan, Jigme Y. Thinley, he then instituted on the PM's direction the Gross National Happiness Center Bhutan as one of the founding members and headed it for 5 years as its executive director under the aegis and the presidency of Her Royal Highness Princess Kesang Choden Wangchuk. He has been teaching, consulting, and speaking at various international and national occasions on mindfulness, ecology, governance, and GNH happiness, among others, in the House of Commons in British Parliament, senators of the Philippines, visiting parliamentarians from other countries to Bhutan in more than dozen universities and colleges in world and more than 10 universities and colleges in India as well. Also addressed international conferences over Skype at University of Prague, the annual psychological conference in Austria, NGO meetings in Italy, GNH practitioners in Australia. His journey to share love, joy, and peace through spirituality continues. He was employed from 17 to 2022 at the Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur. He has also worked with Chandigarh University, and at present he is working with Shulini University also. He is a strong advocate of the organic movement, climate change and environment, a practitioner of mindfulness, a learner of happiness. He is a pilgrim spiritually seeking and sharing love and compassion. The GNH has enabled him to travel around the world advocating the concept of GNH, how it can enhance the lives of societies and nature. He has many interviews, among others, with BBC, ABC, CBN, CNN, podcast, print articles, and other TV shows. He has 3 books to his credit and several contributions to many books. He is fondly noted by BBC as Happiness Guru. So we are very happy to have you with us, the Happiness Guru, and welcome to this podcast, sir.
Thank you so much, Dinesh ji. Thank you so much. It's
Yes.
absolutely an honor for me
Mhm.
to be speaking to you.
Mhm.
Well, Dr. Dineshwar,
Mhm.
whatever you have spoken probably may just reside
Mhm.
in its goodness,
Mhm.
but I don't know if I can be of that potentiality that you think of, that I would be able to answer all your brilliant questions. But let me try. Thank
Yes.
you for inviting me
Yes, sir.
to your
Yes.
show. Thank you.
So, the first, I will not say curious question, but curiosity I have is you are one of the founding members of the Center for GNH. So, what was life before GNH? Before the Royal King of Bhutan proclaimed that GNH is more important than GDP. So, what was the life before that, and how happiness was, or maybe a integral part of your society and culture even before it was institutionalized? So I would request you to throw some light on your childhood and how happiness was there in those days.
Right,
Mhm.
right. Actually, the concept of happiness is not new to
Mhm.
Bhutan.
Mhm.
Back in 1616, one
Mhm.
of the monks from Tibet,
Mhm.
he came to Bhutan
Mhm.
and he unified Bhutan
Mhm.
into one country, because we
Mhm.
had different principalities across
Okay.
each valleys.
Mhm.
So he gave a rule, a code of conduct for the government, saying that any government, if they
Mhm.
cannot create peace and happiness for its people, then there is no need for the government to exist. And his
Mhm.
name was Shabdrung Ngawang Amgyal.
Mhm.
But after he expired, his, follower who, I mean, you know, if he was not reborn, somebody can't be a king. Like in Ram Yug, we had Lakshman who brought Khadau and then ruled the kingdom. In the same way, they had to rule the kingdom in his name. For 100 years, when he went down the lane, in 1729, then it was written down as a legal code in the government system that government must create peace and happiness for its people. So all our kings down the row, they tried their best to bring happiness to the people. When it came to the fourth king, he realized that he's one person trying to bring this happiness to the whole population of his country. Then he thought, my population is now educated enough that I should not be the guiding factor for happiness. I should rather give the code of law, the rule, to the people so that they collectively build their own system and happiness. So he was the person who brought this concept of gross national happiness is more important than gross domestic product, because he was asked when he was returning from a NAM meeting, non-allied meeting from Javana in West Indies. He landed in Mumbai, and then a journalist asked him, "You're a king of a little country up on the Himalayas. What is your GDP?" And that was the moment he propounded that happiness is more important for my people than the concept of GDP. And of course, what he was doing that we did not know, but very subtly he started to decentralize everything. No, he didn't make us feel that he was doing something. Back in his mind, he had that one day I will make my country a democratic country. And then as young as just running 51 years of age, he just decided to step down the throne and give the throne to his son on a condition that he shall be proclaimed, he shall be crowned as a king only after the democratic process takes place, after the elections takes place. So that was the far-sightedness of our fourth king. And so we never felt any difference. Rather, when he said, now it's time for Bhutanese to take over your own governance, people cried, said, no, please don't leave us. We want you to be there. And he said, no, I can't give you all the happiness. You must decide your own happiness. But people said, no, we are happy with whatever you give us, whatever you guide us, whatever you rule for us. We are happy. But well, I think he really forced people to take, democracy. So I wouldn't say that there was a big change between what was there and what came after. What came after was kind of institutionalizing what he was running the governance, in his time. So nothing big changed. We did have reporting in terms of the 4 pillars of happiness also during his time. And because he made people responsible, like grassroots, he said, if you have a need, you need to send your needs to us. I will allocate the money to you, but remember that you will have to spend very, very, genuinely for the purpose that you have asked for. And I think that's how he began the whole process, making people responsible for their own growth and happiness. And then when democracy came, we realized nothing changed, except for the new leader, political leader, and political ministers, 10 ministers and 1 prime minister. Nothing really changed. Everything was running very smoothly the way it was. So thanks to our great fourth king, who had designed the entire process of democracy before he gave the democracy to the people.
Yes. So it was really a foresight by your king, because in the post-COVID, now the world is awakening to the concept of happiness and mindfulness and well-being, which Bhutan has been practicing, as you are saying, from centuries, and which they institutionalized with you as one of the founding members as the Gross National Happiness Center. So when you were founding this center, and I believe this was one of the first institutionalized center for happiness and well-being. So what were your guiding principles? Like whenever we do something new, we always look up to something that we can take inspiration and motivation. We can follow the process of some other person. So how did you do it? What was the process of institutionalizing it?
Well, the process of institutionalizing was already done by Center for Bhutan Studies,
Mhm.
bringing the concept to every ministry and making them responsible from their ministry how they can contribute to the gross national happiness. So
Mhm.
it was very much a governance based top down mechanism,
Mhm.
and also the grassroots up mechanism was based on the concept of decentralization,
Mhm.
where people didn't feel the difference, but the institutionalization happened that the every ministry would sign a kind of agreement with their secretaries would sign down with their directors to
Mhm.
make sure that within their own ministry,
Mhm.
the GNH is taken into consideration for
Mhm.
every action that is taken. So
Mhm.
we have 9 domains, and these are good governance,
Mhm.
psychological well-being.
Mhm.
We have community vitality. We have cultural diversity and resilience. We have time use. We have good governance. We have
Mhm.
ecological diversity and resilience, health, education, and living standards. So
Mhm.
these 9 domains, actually, every ministry has to take into consideration these 9 domains. And if they fall within the responsibility of one of the domain, they have to be responsible. For example,
Mhm.
education, the education ministry has to be responsible for that domain, not
Mhm.
only for their own ministry, but across all other ministry. So
Mhm.
that's how the whole thing was institutionalized, and reporting started to happen through that. So strategies, planning,
Mhm.
even reviewing the plans were
Mhm.
based on the concept of happiness. So
Mhm.
we developed little tools also to, if you had to pass a policy
Mhm.
or the government, then we have a policy screening tool based on the concept of gross national happiness. So we have 33 indicators and
Mhm.
124 variables to measure that whole
Mhm.
concept of GNH. But the concept of gross national happiness center, which was actually pushed by the then prime minister under the aegis of Her Royal Highness, as you just mentioned, um, its main purpose was to bring the concept to the world. So
Mhm.
that's what made me travel around the world,
Mhm.
speaking about the concept of gross national happiness. And as well as my other responsibility was also to kind of apply this concept into the living self.
Mhm.
So I started trying to, propagate to the schools,
Mhm.
started to travel in the schools, started to talk about it, teach about it. And the government themselves also supported this whole idea.
Mhm.
Apart from that, I would get guests from all over the world.
Mhm.
Like teams would come, to
Mhm.
visit, to understand the concept of gross national happiness. I
Mhm.
had several CEOs team from India who came to learn this concept, and I would help them understand and live this concept in practice.
Mhm.
That's how I went through doing all through. And then we were able to have, GNH in Thailand, GNH in Sweden, GNH in US, GNH in Germany, in France, in Switzerland,
Mhm.
all over,
Mhm.
except in India, I suppose. We
Yes.
don't have here. But then we have number of centers who now are working independently, bringing this concept for their
Mhm.
own people and population.
Mhm. So now let us focus a little bit on the education, because education is one aspect. If we do it this correctly, then we develop and make our citizens better in terms of their psychological and mental well-being. So you have just said that GNH centers, and GNH is now in so many countries like Thailand and Sweden. So right now, for example, in a country there is an education policy and education system, and the moment the GNH is introduced, so what are the fundamental changes or additions we bring with GNH in the education system?
Right. So, the happiness concept is not very ancient. It
Mm,
started in mid 1500s in
mm,
Spain, which meant
mm,
luck.
mm,
Happy was meaning luck. It
mm,
later became in 1772 as a part of the constitution in the US for pursuit of happiness. And the
mm,
happiness was understood very differently in the West and still understood very
mm,
differently because it's individual based,
mm,
while our Asians are collective based.
mm,
Now, happiness, we realize, just to give you an example,
mm,
when I was in a standard 4 or
mm,
3, there was a mathematical problem that read, if you had 10 apples and 3 were stolen, how
mm,
many are left with you?
mm,
Thank God I didn't become a thief.
mm.
But look at the language that was used in the
Yes.
education system.
Yes.
Now, realize this way, if this was reformulated,
Mm,
you have 10 apples, you shared 3 away, how
mm,
many are left with you, and what would you like to do with them?
mm,
You're raising one, a
mm.
value of share. The
Yeah.
other one, you are raising a concept of thinking, critical
Yeah.
thinking for the
Yeah.
child. The
Mm,
child might think, okay, I have 7 apples left, I shared 3, 7 left. Out of that, I love my mother so much, I'll bring 3 to her. See, the
mm.
term love comes in.
Yes.
And then he would say, oh, I love my father, although he shouts at me, I'll bring 2 to him. You see,
Yes.
two,
Yes.
two I will share with friends again,
Mm,
something
mm,
like that. You make a very creative kind of thing. So
mm,
what we have tried in Bhutan is that to change the whole language of teaching.
mm,
Even in electrical, if you had to teach a child that electricity, the beam of the light flows straight, then
mm,
we would try and picture out, mirror the light in certain angles to focus to a particular, if it had to be focused to a particular place, we would angle that with 2, 3 mirrors and focus it to a place. But at every angle, we would write love, compassion,
mm,
altruism, kindness,
mm,
words. So you've
mm,
passed one, you've gone to another, you
mm,
passed another. Lights
mm,
moves in a straight line that you can prove,
mm,
and plus you also bring values of love and
mm,
all that. So in the
mm,
same way, every subject can have language in it
mm,
embedded. Whether it's, we're not talking about changing the curriculum, we're not talking about changing any syllabus, but we're
mm,
just very subtly entering into the language that we speak, the
mm,
language that we want to teach the child with. This
mm,
is one area that we thought would be very effective. And we have also largely given the possibility for head teachers and their counselor to decide and see how it can be applied in
mm,
their own environment.
mm,
So, very much in the education system, like agriculture, greenery, become a
mm,
very big part of it. And so, how a school begins is this, that um, the morning assemblies are not conducted by teachers anymore. It's
mm.
done by the students themselves. They
Okay.
have their issues which are spoken by
Mm,
the captain
mm,
or on a changing basis by
mm,
the seniors. They
mhm,
speak to their friends on the assembly. If the teacher has to, or the principal or the headmaster has to give some message to the
mm,
students, then they have to take the permission of the students.
mm,
So it's the other way around. So they become
mm,
the whole responsible for their own conduct and for their own self. Now, what is happening is they also make sure that every child on a, on a rotation basis, they want every child to come and speak, either
mm,
their problem or speak about some, things that are happening around the world or
mm,
some kind of problems, so that it's known to everybody. So
mm,
what children do is, oh, today I've seen a war,
mm,
a movie, news on war,
mm,
and how I felt about it, the
mm,
pain that I carry. And
mm,
what did I do? I
mm,
sent my love and my compassion to all those who are suffering. And in that way, our whole country, when there's a sufferance in the world, the whole monks get together and pray for the world
mm,
happiness.
mm,
So After the assembly, children come, they don't go to the classroom. So they have their own group gardens or cleaning jobs. So they clean with their hands, bare hands, the thing, and then they have to go and wash their hands. So they're touching the bhumi earth, they're touching the water, the element. And once they are clean, they go to the classroom. And the first 1 to 3 minutes, depending on which teacher, what period it is, in the beginning, it is definitely 3 minutes. You sit down and you focus on your breath, meditation. They are meant to meditate. So every class, at least 1 minute, every teacher meditates so that they bring the children onto the same page before they start to teach. Every week, there is one child who talks about happiness, what makes him or her happy, and what they think is happiness. So, for example, a school came up with this idea of, oh God, we all bring junk food here to eat. And the kind of papers, wrappers that we throw is so much. And they calculated, if entire Bhutanese school would do, that is about 5 million wrappers. That's going to come over a period of a month. So then they thought, no, we say no to packed food. Let's all prepare food from home and carry. Those people who can't afford, we share our food. So they came with a very new idea. Then suddenly they saw that there were a lot of bins filled with toilet papers, sneezing and rubbing. They said, oh, this is also a big waste, a sufferance for our ecology, for our environment. We should say no, but what do we do? So they said, let's prepare hankies. And we come with hankies. We bring two hankies. One gets bad, we use the other one. It's washable and reusable. So we don't bring sufferance to the planet Earth. That's something that happens with schools, and now they are also focusing like, let's have a quality class. So the students sit themselves and then they start to talk, what would be better as an improvement if they brought in. So they start to work on it. And then they come with great ideas for the school and for themselves. So this is how the rolling is taking place. And plus, all Bhutanese children come from a humble background. So we have this, contentment. Like every child is told, if you can't appreciate what you have, you'll never be able to happy even with as many things as you will make later in your life. So right from our childhood, we become very calming. And I think happiness for Bhutanese has become kind of a genetic, because we've been living with this cultural, ethos very strongly. Plus, we have green. Wherever you turn, it's all forest and greenery. So I think knowing that how closely we are linked with our self, our genetic self with the animals and the plants, I think that makes Bhutanese all very happy. But definitely, we have tried milestones on bringing happiness in the students. And you'll understand, we don't teach them. There are classes which they prepare themselves. And if you go and ask a Bhutanese child saying that, oh, money is more important than your happiness, how can you be happy without money? You'll get challenged, because they will tell you money is a necessity, but not for happiness. Maybe it can contribute to some degree of happiness, but money is not absolutely everything. They will tell you that living with family, having that care and love, that relationship is much more better, which of course Harvard did 75-year-old study to prove the same thing, right? So they will tell you all this and they'll challenge you back.
Yes. So, of course, you have rightly said, one, that at the curriculum and the language level, we have to rethink the language, and then we have to make the young children, the student, more aware about all of these concepts so that they can start thinking, right? One remark which you made, and which is right also, that in India we do not have right now the concept of GNH, although being a neighbor and a very close ties with Bhutan. So, and you are living in Delhi NCR for quite some time now, and you are associated with IIT and some other universities. So you understand the kind of competition students in Indian schools face, and then they have all these entrance exams for IITs and medical, and then they look for the academic rigor also. So how can a school or an academic institute or a policy maker can balance between the concept of happiness, discussing happiness, doing things for happiness and well-being, as well as this academic rigor which the students have to face, the competition exams which the students have to face?
Right. So there are a few things in this, in your
Mhm.
question. Number one, if somebody is happy,
Mhm.
the person is calm,
Mhm.
much more focused, much more concentrative,
Mhm.
and so he or she will be able to do much better in life than
Mhm.
the normal ones.
Yes.
In the corporate world, what we have found is that those who look happy, easygoing, produce
Mhm.
much more than those
Mhm.
who are on their A's, on their
Mhm.
toes all the time. They produce
Mhm.
much less. So we know that happy children can be much more focused, much more concentrative. And
Mhm.
what we try to bring home, like to give you an example of IIT
Mhm.
Kharagpur,
Mhm.
many children, I
Mhm.
think about 30 children over the period of almost 5 years, they came to me saying, "Sir, I don't want to continue my degree." So I
Mhm.
would ask them, why? Now that
Mhm.
you're in third year, that you are in second year, you
Mhm.
completed. Why are you saying this? They say, "Sir, it was not my interest. My
Mhm.
parents forced me."
Yes.
And so then I would tell, no, 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 no. Now you have come to this,
Mhm.
try to complete. It'll give you food and
Mhm.
I'll help you find your passion. So I
Mhm.
help them find their passion and
Mhm.
they become happy and they continue their journey to complete their
Mhm.
education. Now, the problem here, when I was in Hong Kong, the Chinese university where I was invited to give a talk on how can GNH be helpful for disaster management,
Mhm.
I was taken to several schools and I
Mhm.
was shocked to see that children between the age of 12 and 14 are already in anti-depression drugs.
Oh.
And I said, what is happening? Why?
Mhm.
Then I found out that parents say you have to be better than that, better than this, better
Mhm.
than that,
Mhm.
as young as they are. So there is
Mhm.
a subtle message that goes to them
Mhm.
to do something better than others.
Mhm.
And when they grow and when they cannot match what
Mhm.
has been pushed in their mind, they become very depressed,
Mhm.
very anxious.
Mhm.
And then, of course, there's no other way but to give them antidepressant drugs.
Mhm.
So I think largely it is our parents who
Mhm.
are making nonsense of our children.
Mhm.
And what we try also to say is, look, ultimately, we will all pass away. What is the ultimate goal of every one of us? Is to be
Mhm.
happy. What makes you happy? Not
Mhm.
necessarily all the material things in life. Let's
Mhm.
try and look for happiness within. Two things become very paramountly important. One is your right intention
Mhm.
and right efforts. If with those two things in you all the time, if things don't come right, leave it to the universe. The universe has something else for you in plan,
Mhm.
you know. But never give up your
Mhm.
right intention and right efforts. Two things must always be matching. So when you bring this, ultimately, when in a time when everyone is dying, you
Mhm.
are in the last part of your life. If you
Mhm.
ask what are the regrets of all these dying people, they
Mhm.
give you so much of things. I wish I hadn't worked so hard. I
Mhm.
wish I had not spent
Mhm.
so much time in doing other things, but done what I enjoyed doing it. I left it for tomorrow. I
Mhm.
wish I had spent more time with my loved ones. I wish I had said sorry to that person. I wish I would have said forgiven that person and myself. All these
Mhm.
regrets come towards the end of the life. So
Mhm.
why can't we walk back and not come with this regret at the end of the life? So
Mhm.
when you start to open the mindsets of the young people, they begin to realize.
Yes.
And and it's not, you're very right. There's so much of competition. But
Mhm.
if you look deeply, education system has been designed in such
Mhm.
a way
Mhm.
by the Europeans, by the Britishers in India,
Mhm.
is to create a product for a marketplace,
Yes.
nothing more. We are all becoming a product for the marketplace. And
Mm.
that's where we are taking competition. And we think that we will be happy when I become CEO of a company, or when I become a rich man, or when I become a completely a full-fledged engineer and earning so much of, package of things. But frankly saying, no one is happy. Jack Ma, when he became the first Chinese billionaire, he was asked by a journalist, "Are you happy now becoming a billionaire?" He said, "No, not at all. When I was an engineer, I earned enough. I was living with my family, my parents. It was enough for all of us. But after becoming a billionaire, I don't have time. I have not seen my parents for so long. I have not been with my family for so long. I'm not happy at all." So, if happiness is the ultimate goal, then our entire process must definitely change. Definitely change. If you look into what is happening today in India, and it's all because of parents, is that children are going out to earn money to US, or to Canada, or to Australia, or to UK. And I know of many people, friends that I know, or people I have come across, they may have just one child,
Mm.
married and settled in Canada. They are very aged here. Their property maybe in Hyderabad, in Kolkata, maybe in Delhi, you know, and one day they will pass. And these children are not going to come back. They struggled all their life to make so much of wealth for the children. What is the use of that wealth? That was a question actually a British parliamentarian asked me. He stood, if I don't make money enough for my children, build a house for them, then what is my use being here? So I told him, "Sir, can you give me in writing that your children will live in the house you build, and the money that you save, they're going to live on this? I will give you in writing. None of this will come true." He looked at me for a little while and sat down. The reality is, I'll tell you one example. I began my work as a commerce student in Bhutan. I was the first government paid graduate, sponsored graduate, who shifted, not working in government, but in the private sector back in 1982, and started to serve the king's maternal uncle, the fourth king, His Majesty Jigme Singye Wangchuk's maternal uncle, who was also a delegate prime minister at one point of time. I used to work with Tatas with him. So I used to very often travel to Kolkata, and I used to live in Trivoli Court. It's a court which is quite fancy and covered. There's only one gate you enter, and it's all very private property around. And there used to be a lady on I think on the southwest, building on the third floor. She would, in the morning when I would walk out, I used to go early to office. So she would see me from there, and I would wave at her and say, "Good morning, madam." And I had known her for a few, because of few interactions. Her husband had passed away a year ago, and her daughter was married and settled in UK. Son was married and settled in Canada. Sorry, in US. And of course, I used to go to Bhutan, come back, because I was associated with Tatas and other industries, helping the uncle of the king. And when I went to Bhutan and returned, I didn't see that lady. Then I thought she must have gone to one of her children. So that was my thought. And suddenly one evening, 3 days later, when I returned from my office, I saw the whole Triboli court filled with people. And they were from the residents. I said, "What happened?" And they told me, "Do you remember this lady, old lady there?" I said, "Yes, yes. She must have gone with one of her children, no?" They said, "No, she died 2 weeks ago. They just broke open and she's started to smell. Then only the neighbor came to know." So look, parents struggle so much for the happiness of their children, but they don't know what happiness means really. And I think this is an advocacy that we must make to all the young parents, not to make their children understand their mindset, but to give them a chance what they are born for. Like, I'm very appreciative of the concept of NEP 2020. They have this concept of decoding a child's movement from right from birth onwards, what the child is interested, just to keep a assessment for the child until she or he gets into school. So that I think the school's responsibility then is to help the child focus on where that child's interests really lie. I mean, we all can't be prime ministers of India. We can't be all ministers of India.
Yes.
We can't all be the CEOs of the world.
Mm.
But we can be somebody on this world, a
Yes.
happy human being,
Mm.
earning, being in relation with our people, with our family, with everybody. So I think the concept of the parents must change to bring a new age of children altogether. So I feel that if we can change one generation, this present
Mm.
generation,
Mm.
we would have changed all the generations in life.
Yes, yes. That's why I also discussed that education is the seed through which everything can change. We are talking about parents. Now let's talk a little bit about this generation also. So nowadays, what has happened due to the social media and technology that people have illogical aspirations also. So one person, maybe from Mumbai, son of an industrialist or a daughter, for his or her birthday, they go to Dubai and they celebrate their birthday there. And one little kid in a village somewhere in Bhutan or in India looks at that video of 2 minutes, 3 minutes on their mobile phone, right? And then they also aspire that one day. And so how can I like say this? Some kind of desires will be there. Now we cannot block people from having these desires, and that now these so the person is now living in a very different kind of world inside his or her head, and that can also lead to a lot of depression, anxiety, which is unfounded. There are very few things the person himself or herself can do about it, right? So how do we utilize technology in a better manner so that we can curb these kind of desires?
Right. Actually, the technology has been the misguiding factor for all human happiness.
Hmm.
Um, because if you realize, at one point, a person may say, uh, love, might send a love. Next
Hmm.
moment, he or she sees, somebody in the friendship family has died. They'll
Hmm.
put, rip. The next moment, they're laughing, enjoying.
Hmm. Hmm.
Emotions has also been drained or taken away. So
Hmm.
there's one of my friends called, I call him Yogi.
Hmm.
Uh, he has produced a app called uh, One
Hmm.
Your One Life.
Hmm.
YOL is the
Hmm.
app. What
Hmm.
does that app do is if every universities, colleges take this app,
Hmm.
every child has to pay 1 rupee per day, which is 365 rupees per year. And
Hmm.
that app is helping the child to, and also it's a credited course. So the child has to make sure that he or she uses that app. And it is in comparison with her kin and kith and her other friends and overall average. So he or she tries to see how her left and right brains are matching and working together. So this
Hmm.
one app that is really going to be very helpful if the universities and colleges apply. The other one is Dr. Reiki,
Hmm.
Satyendra Singh Reiki, who happens to, who started actually this funding for Reiki Center, Happiness Center in IIT Kharagpur, where I joined. Today, he has over 50 universities who have taken the support from him to start a happiness centers within the
Hmm.
universities. And this is the science of happiness. So the
Hmm.
science of happiness is taught. What is really happiness? What
Hmm.
makes you unhappy? What makes you happy in true
Hmm.
sense? And this kind of education, if we can
Hmm.
bring at the college level, even if the child has made her or his desires and dreams at a very young age, if they
Hmm.
are not, if they are guided that young, all the
Hmm.
better. If they are not guided at that young, at least
Hmm.
when they enter with
Hmm.
that aspiration, when they enter the college,
Hmm.
then they would start with this concept of the science of happiness, and they would understand what
Hmm.
the truth and the reality really is. Because
Hmm.
I think we are washed away by this media on what the truth is and what the reality is. So we are no more real. We live in a very imaginary kind of, life. I was just shocked to see that America alone spends $571 million per capita on media. And of that, uh, 49% goes to digital media. So you can imagine if every individual in India, for example, was like 9 crores per capita, that's the size of advertisement goes to tell the people to sensitize a child what he or she must do. You know, a lady, what must she wear or dress or paint herself with? All this is kind of um, uh, eating away or draining the mind, the psychology, the cognition, the entire existence of human society. So I think, when I was in IIT Kharagpur, something I always did was that I made every child that entered the classroom to leave their phones on the table there,
Yes.
not to carry with them. Something that we can culture always. And everywhere, even here, when I, get into a class, I say no child will look down, because then they would be playing with their app or something. They will not be listening. So I think there are ways and means of control. Parents feel really when they see other child with iPad or iPhones, so they get like my child should be there, and they try to focus that child totally into a wrong concept altogether. Children are so fond of packed foods, sweetened drinks, and all this is so messy. And there is enough research done. So here, I just met a child eating some packed food and a Coca-Cola. Then I explained her, a little kid, I explained her, look, kid, this is how it's going to change you, your mindset, your brain, your physicality. Over the time, you'll become obese, you'll become this, that. Now she meets me on the way with her mother going to the school, and she greets me, and her mother says she has left all this kind of food. She remembers you every time this food comes nearby. She says no to the food. So I think we can educate all children very well with right concept, with the right kind of truth in what we talk, and they believe you. And I told her mother, never eat in front of this child anything like this. And she has also lived to it. So I'm sure this child will change something very different than the other children. So I think it is also the responsibility of all of us, every one of us who knows what really happiness means, and how can we bring this to the world. Like in the US, they did a survey to see in class 12 level, standard 12 level. The teachers were questioned, surveyed, do you teach environment? And many said no. And the question, why did you not teach? The choices they took is, well, it's not required. Well, the children don't understand. Well, it is not in the syllabus. Well, I don't know. These kind of things. So even sensitizing on environment, you don't have to like happiness bring in a subject by itself. In young times, you can bring them differently. Many children, if you ask in the city, where does this milk come from? What milk is this? Cow milk. Where does it come from? That booth. They'll give the name of the booth. They don't know that this is a cow that gives the milk. They have not seen even a cow.
Yes, yes.
So, we are really destroying humanity altogether. How can we get back? And you are right. Education is the only way through that we must. I encourage every parent, take your child over the long weekend to a village, live in the village, let them work in the village. Understand what the village life is. Understand what the reality of life is. Be with animals. Be with the forest, with plants, and see the happiness that will come into you. Because I teach this, like we know we are all, made up of 5 elements of planet Earth, and genetically we can prove that. Apart from that, we know that there's a cow therapy in the West. All the children who are getting very nervous, depressed, anxious, go to the cow and hug the cow.
Yes.
And
Yes.
they become calm.
Mm.
Simply because cow has 88% of genetic information which we carry.
Mm.
We haven't given the cow.
Mm.
The plants carry phytoncides, chemicals that kill all our tumors.
Mm.
A frog has 90% of genetic information that we carry.
Mm.
So the entire nature has made us. Today
Mm.
we are destroying nature. We are
Mm.
building nature the way we like, while the
Mm.
nature has built us. So unless
Mm.
we bring this kind of understanding to our
Mm.
young people, young population,
Mm.
we'll never be able to, grow to a
Mm.
better world
Mm.
as we go along. And one thing that must change completely in India, and thanks to NIP, I think it is the way that they're trying, is we must go back to our ancient learning systems.
Mm.
Not that we sit in a parsala, sitting down and all that. We can use all the modern facilities, but
Mm.
let us learn by questioning,
Mm.
not by being rotting or by being
Mm.
taught. A
Mm.
teacher should come to a classroom and say, this is the topic we want to discuss. Give
Mm.
the headlines of it or the major part of it, and let's
Mm.
start discussing.
Mm.
Challenge the children. And I know because genetically we carry so much information. I don't know, quad 3 trillion kind
Mm.
of genetic information that we carry. And all this information are with us. When we begin to question ourselves, we will come to reality and truth by ourselves. So I think the teaching process should change as well.
Mm.
These questions that we raise now, the mindset children have built, the kind of desires that they have built, we can begin to ask them, question them, where will you take this desire to you?
Mm.
And then they'll say, oh, I'll become rich. What after that? They'll say,
Mm.
oh, I'll be happy. How will that richness make you happy?
Mm.
Keep on questioning. Then they'll kind of decode themselves. Oh God, no, I'm on a wrong path.
Mm.
So then they will start to change. I
Mm.
think this is all the work of the education systems that we must work towards this. Otherwise, we will not be able to change anything, in our systems. And I know Hindustan has been the Guru, Vishwa Guru,
Mm.
all through its existence.
Mm.
Although Islam came and destroyed many things, but
Mm.
British came and stopped that destruction, at least thanks to the British. Many of the things are lying in China, many of the things are lying in Europe, but something that is deep within our own society is also lying in the minds of every
Mm.
individual, and in our
Mm.
in our Upanishads, in our
Mm.
Vedas, and in our
Mm.
Gita, and all that. Everything is there. How can we decode this?
Mm.
Because I think people should, it's a misled concept that making money makes you happy. The
Mm.
moment that changes,
Mm.
that money doesn't bring you happiness.
Mm.
Money can't buy you time. Money can't buy you love. Money
Mm.
can't buy you your, all those you desire for in the truth of humanity. Can't
Mm.
buy you parents that,
Mm.
once they are gone, they are gone, right? So there are many things that money can't buy or resource you to become who you can be.
Mm.
So if we can take children to understand this concept, then I think we will find a way out to help them grow
Mm.
to be different folks, different people. You know,
Yes. So,
it doesn't mean that they will not be intelligent. They will be very intelligent. We'll
mm.
have modern science, we'll have modern technology, all that will happen.
Mm.
Maybe they will even grow out of it into a better technology.
Mm. Yes. So, in one of your previous responses, you said that our education system is making products for the market. And the market forces are also like this, that they are psychologically influencing us to consume more and more and never be satisfied with what we have, which is very antithesis of happiness and mental well-being. So, if you were the uh, in authority, maybe as prime minister of the entire world, or maybe the education minister of the entire world, right? How you think? education system can compete with this kind of market forces which focus on more and more consumption so that their share, their profitability can keep on increasing while the mental health and well-being of all of us world citizen is decreasing. And it's not the case of India and Bhutan only, as you have said, that even richest of the countries, most developed countries, they are also suffering from depression and anxiety. So what
True,
are yes.
true, very true. Thank you for this beautiful question. Um, who should we blame? If
Hmm.
you look into the market forces,
Hmm.
the blame should be each one of us. The economy, so called GDP, rolls out with the exchange of money.
Hmm.
Whatever we do, if young children in a school like, for example, Mexico City, 30% of youth are diabetic as
Hmm.
young as 19 years old. Why? Because they go for KFC, McDonald's, and Coca-Cola. That's the kind of food they eat.
Hmm.
This is because of the advertisement, the sensitization, as you
Hmm.
said, that changes their mindset. But
Hmm.
we are to be blamed because we are creating these forces and we are bringing this mechanism in the marketplace. If we can change this, tell the child, look, child, this cloth that we wear is a BT cotton. And what does a BT cotton mean? It's a genetically modified cotton that needs more chemicals. And
Hmm.
chemical kills all the soil, all the organisms in the soil. And every time we do, it kills more and more.
Hmm.
And then we buy more. If we don't buy and say, I want only organic cloth
Hmm.
and not this BT cloth, then the
Hmm.
factories will pressurize the cotton growers to grow more organic cotton. Now,
Hmm.
there are organic cotton cannot be produced with mechanization.
Hmm.
People have to shift. So factory people will shift to the agriculture to use their
Hmm.
hands to produce more.
Hmm.
And the factories will produce right amount of clothes. They might be little priced higher, but they will
Hmm.
produce right clothes. We are helping this way
Hmm.
also ourselves not to be too greedy. We are helping the nature to rejuvenate. We are helping the people to have a new job. But our problem is we are brought into a fear factor. If this happened, well,
Hmm.
meat and dairy products, for example, are the two of the greatest industries on this planet Earth that is actually bringing cancer and diabetics to the people.
Hmm.
Now, no medical book is going to write. Who rules this? Is pharma who are selling medicines and
Hmm.
all that. They are on the top of the board who sign this should be in the medical book, you know.
Hmm.
How can we bring sensitize our population? And
Hmm.
this can only happen through the education system. So
Hmm.
that's why I said if we can change a generation now, we'll be able to change many generations after. So to change this generation, we have to come to the truth. Whatever is happening, we have to uncover it,
Hmm.
unfold it, and
Hmm.
bring them the exact truth. And
Hmm.
then if we don't participate in
Hmm.
this wild
Hmm.
race of buying more and more and more and
Hmm.
more,
Hmm.
then we will calm down ourselves, the earth itself, and
Hmm.
of course, so-called the GDP may not increase, but
Hmm.
something will increase. The well-being and happiness of people will increase.
Yes.
And I think this can only be done when we bring the truth, absolute truth and reality to
Hmm.
our children, to our people in our locality or through the schools or through different mechanisms.
Hmm.
Because GDP uh, is the measure today uh,
Hmm.
to measure that how a country is growing. But
Hmm.
if you look, if there is, all the forest is all destroyed, standing trees have no meaning for the GDP. But once they are removed, once they
Hmm.
are cut, the timber becomes so valuable, right?
Hmm.
Timber becomes very valuable. That becomes a market product. But what about all those, species, animals, insects, plants? They're all going to be destroyed. In the same way, if we have a city, let's say Jaipur, for example, has criminals, lot of criminals destroying everything. GDP will increase. Like cutting the forest, GDP will also increase. Why?
Hmm.
because the government has to redo it. So when you spend money in building something, the GDP increases. India sells, like that was 3 4 years ago, I googled to find India sells 15,000 crores of alcohol every month.
Yes.
I mean, that increases GDP. What
Mhm.
about the health of the people? What about the struggle in the family? What about the social connect? All these are not looked after.
Mhm.
So unless we bring the truth and reality to our
Mhm.
children,
Mhm.
I don't think we'll be able to change their mindset anyway. So
Mhm.
if I was a minister, I
Mhm.
would bring this kind of education to
Mhm.
my people, to population, to
Mhm.
understand life from a totally different dimension
Mhm.
altogether.
Yes. So you have very rightly said, and I believe through our conversation, I also realize that there are so many fundamental concepts of our society and our commerce which has to be changed to bring happiness and well-being in the society. It cannot be done on the surface level by just introducing a subject or some teacher teaching happiness at university or college. There are so many things which at the society level, at national level, at family level, at parental level, at curriculum level, we have to do to bring happiness and well-being in the society and in the world.
Very
So
true.
yes, so thank you very much for this very insightful talk. And I believe people who will listen to this talk will find it very fruitful. And it's a lifelong learning discussion which we have done today. And the insights from today's talk can change societies, lives, and so many things. Thank you very much.